Welcome to Down in the Bumps, a perinatal mental health podcast that shares stories of women and families who have experienced perinatal mental health problems. My name is Laura. I'm your host and I'm a doctor training in psychiatry. At the end of each episode, I'll share some learning about perinatal mental health related to the story we've heard. Please note that what is discussed in the podcast should not be taken as medical advice, and you should discuss your own medical care with your GP. In this episode, I talk with Charlotte, who tells me two stories of developing severe anxiety and depression after each of her daughters were born. She describes how she battled with distressing, intrusive thoughts and how lots of different things, including the support of friends and family, helped her to get better. There is mention of miscarriage and suicide. If this may be triggering for you, perhaps step away and join us another time. I'll let Charlotte introduce herself.
Hello, my name's Charlotte. I'm 34. I've been married to my husband since 2018 and I'm a proud mother to two girls. So my eldest was born during COVID in August 2020. My second in November 2022. Prior to having children, I had absolutely no issues with my mental health. I suppose I've always been a glass half empty kind of person, anxious, quite detail orientated, really like having a plan or a list. So I like solving problems, having answers. I studied chemistry at Oxford for my degree. So I now work for a large food business in supply chain. So I like finding those answers, and I'd say I probably overall fit the bill of a bit of a sporty geek. So I've always played loads of hockey and enjoyed being outside, being active, and live in Manchester now, and I'm really lucky to have a great group of friends and family around me. So both here, and then my husband's from Ireland, so we've got a strong contingent over there as well.
Fantastic. So why is it important for you to share your story, Charlotte?
Just fundamentally, I think it's so important that we talk about perinatal mental health. I remember feeling totally lost, blindsided, felt naive, I felt angry because I had no idea that people had experiences like mine. And I think that just made it so terrifying when I was in it. So everyone's experience is totally different, but even if elements of my stories resonate, I want people who are in that depth of the struggle to hear how it felt and importantly know that I recovered. So for the person in it is one thing, but then also for partners and families or future parents to know how common it is for women to get into just such dark, lonely places. It's not just a little bit of blues. It might be for some people, but it's so individual. Even my two experiences were so different. So yeah, essentially awareness. I see it very similar to miscarriage as that big thing that loads of people go through that we don't generally talk about. And it is mind-blowing how many people actually have subsequently shared with me their experiences. And actually people do want to talk about it.
Yeah, I mean, there's so many people on there that you just wouldn't really know what's going on unless, as you say, you have those conversations. So that's really good that you're sharing your story today. Coming on to thinking about your experiences, when did you first start to feel unwell, and what kind of things did you notice, or maybe the people around you notice?
Okay, so initially with my first daughter, all my thoughts and concerns were initially all connected to breastfeeding. So it was August 2020, it was lockdown, couldn't go to health clinics, couldn't meet any of the mums other than in a park for an hour. I thought I was prepared for her arrival. So I'd done NCT, I'd read things, I'd done hypnobirthing, prepared for the birth. And to be quite honest, I hadn't considered that I would find feeding difficult. It just hadn't really crossed my mind. The first 2 weeks went pretty well. And she gained weight well. My husband went back to work, and I think just that mental switch of, so fathers go back to work after 2 weeks, so I must be able to cope now on my own every day. And I sort of resisted allowing people to come. I mean, I couldn't anyway, really, because of COVID, but I was quite resistant to let people help me because I thought, well, I shouldn't necessarily need it. And then I just started to worry that I wasn't doing anything right. So the 3 measurable things that my analytical brain wanted was to know that she was weeing, pooing, and gaining weight. And I needed that reassurance to tell me that everything was working. And then she stopped gaining weight perfectly. And that was my only measure that I had. So all doubt started to creep in. I was also Googling, which isn't great as a first time done. But then one night she was sick, and in my mind she choked. She didn't choke, but she just sort of gagged a bit. But that then made me super sensitive to anything overnight. And I had her in the room with us, so it just meant that I didn't sleep. So from probably when she was about 4 weeks, I was getting a few hours, maybe 1 or 2 some nights, of sleep per night. That really started to then take its toll. So it took me a good while to acknowledge that actually anything was affecting me as opposed to worrying about the feeding. But eventually I knew something was wrong because I'd wanted a baby for such a long time. We'd had a miscarriage the year before. We were so thrilled to start a family. And I found myself just in my head and full of regret, feeling totally trapped in this relentless world of feeding that I'd completely got myself into. I felt like I only had myself to blame for this entire situation. I had no appetite at all. I lost loads of weight. And now looking back, I'd also recognised that I was suffering from severe anxiety. So sort of shaking, feeling pins and needles, so like physical symptoms as well. Feeling that kind of heat over my arms whenever I knew a feed was coming. That anticipation just was quite debilitating. I still wasn't sleeping at all, and just obsessionally thinking about what she needed. If I should stop feeding, should I change? So it wasn't necessarily that I was particularly fixed on breastfeeding, far from it. I just felt there was no solution that would work for me.
And who did you reach out to?
So I initially spoke to my health visitor, who was really reassuring, and she did the very first of the assessments that I had, so the Edinburgh postnatal depression assessment. I also spoke to the GP about how I was feeling, and particularly to try and get more sleep because I couldn't naturally stay either or switch off. He prescribed me some sleeping pills, and I didn't take them because I felt like that was going to be a risk to me trying to feed my daughter overnight. And then everything really intensified very quickly. Periods of feeling like myself, feeling normal, were getting smaller and smaller. And those thoughts would just run away with me, feeling so guilty, wishing away the responsibility that I'd now got. It was like, the best way I can describe it is the feeling of fate, just feeling that I was stuck on this direction, this road, that it would inevitably end up with me taking my life. And I'd never really had reason to doubt my brain before. It's kind of served me quite well up to this point in my life. But I didn't recognise these thoughts and feelings. They didn't really fit with my values, and they didn't fit with this other side of my brain that was telling me, of course you don't want to do this. It was escalating so quickly that day to day I felt so much worse, and that's why it was so scary.
Okay, so things got really difficult, it seems like really quickly as well. So then you were later referred to perinatal mental health services. How were you referred, and what kind of support were you offered?
So as things were escalating, I spoke to my health visitor again, who was thankfully incredible and worked really urgently and quickly with the community perinatal team to come and do an assessment. So they came to the house and explained to me that there were these mother and baby units that were designed to keep mother and baby together, to get mental health support for you, but also to have nursery nurses to make sure that babies were brilliantly looked after as well. So I'd never heard of them. And as strange and as different as that seemed to my normal life, I just knew I couldn't be at home. So I started taking the antidepressants at this point, but I don't think they'd really kicked in. And within 48 hours of that assessment, I was admitted to Ribblesmere, the mother and baby unit in Chorley. The admission itself was pretty rough. Unfortunate timing, as ever. It was a Friday night, and with it being COVID, you weren't allowed out of your room until you had a negative COVID test. So unfortunately, mine didn't come back till the Sunday night, so I couldn't leave my room, which was very, very difficult. But I did immediately have brilliant reassurance and advice from the nursery team on breastfeeding, and I got lots of advice. I distinctly remember one specific thing that the consultant said to me, which is that I know that you don't believe me now, but you will get better. And that was actually weirdly comforting, because I absolutely did not believe her.
No.
So I was very impatient. I wanted to be better immediately, but slowly I started to feel like myself for more of the time. By this point I was on sertraline and quetiapine that was there to help with my anxious thoughts. So we settled on a dose for both of them. My confidence grew. And then I started to feel ready to have some leave and have some nights at home. So overall, I was an inpatient for 9 weeks, but the end of that was very much a transition home. And I had great advice from friends who are familiar with perinatal mental health. I read a lot about mindfulness and intrusive thoughts and how to try and recognize them as not being an inherent reflection of you and you being a terrible person. And it didn't mean that I didn't love my daughter. And then I sort of realized I hadn't had a panic attack for a while, and actually I was looking forward to being at home. I had almost a checklist of things to do throughout the day to keep me busy, but I didn't feel completely controlled by it either. So I just felt much more like myself. And then eventually I was discharged from the ward. I remained under the care of the community team for a little while, but actually was feeling great and was discharged from them pretty soon after. So then I sort of put that whole experience with my first daughter in a little box of postnatal depression and moved on.
It's so nice to hear about how admission to the mother and baby unit really helped you. Just to pick up a couple of things, just for people listening who may not know what you mean. Sertraline is an antidepressant, and quetiapine is an antipsychotic, which is used in low doses, can be really helpful for the anxious thoughts that you were describing. So with having that experience and, as you say, sort of putting it in a box and feeling like you'd maybe dealt with that, how did you feel about maybe having more children?
So if you'd asked me anywhere near the beginning of my my eldest daughter's birth, absolutely not. I was full of regret from what I'd even done at that point. But probably when she was about a year or so, I felt like I'd processed what had happened before. I felt stronger. I felt much more like myself. And I could almost blame a lot of that experience first time round on COVID to an extent. And also I felt like I'd learned a lot. So actually we knew we wanted to have more children and went into that decision with excitement. And when I fell pregnant again, we were really looking forward to things, and I actually felt quite optimistic at that point.
Good. So how was that pregnancy?
The pregnancy itself was actually fine, other than being very strange to be pregnant and be able to leave the house, which was the first time around, because nobody really saw me other than on a Zoom screen. I had lots of people checking in throughout, through the midwives at the hospital, through the health visiting team, and then through the community perinatal team. So before her arrival, we built a care plan and a crisis plan should I need it. But like I said, I was at that point feeling quite optimistic that this was all that, maybe nice to have it as a worst case, but it all felt like that was there. I felt pretty good and comfortable going into things.
Okay. And then how was your mental health after your second daughter was born?
Well, the day after she was born, everything felt brilliant. We thought I was going to be discharged that first day, but that didn't happen, so I had to stay overnight. The second that my head hit the pillow for me to try and get to sleep, I had a panic attack, and all those sensations, all those fears, all the anxiety came flooding back. And it was things like, I was obviously in a ward, so like the sheets on the bed reminded me of Ribblemere, and noises she was making in the cot next to me, just exploded in my head. It just felt like, it's going to happen again. So when my husband came in the next morning, I told him we need to speak to the mental health team. We increased my sertraline back as quick as possible. But it was terrifying, but I felt stupid and I felt embarrassed, feeling so confident going into it. So it was just this horrible familiarity of, I know this, I know these racing thoughts, and I immediately regret it being a decision to have another child. I brought this all on myself again, and there is absolutely no way I can look after 2 children in my life. I don't understand how I can practically do that. So my brain was stuck trying to solve that as well. So, lots of things running through my head at that point.
Oh. And you hadn't even left the hospital, had you? And so you're worrying about something that hadn't even happened yet, and you're just sort of stuck with that.
And what made it even more challenging was that I wasn't allowed to leave the hospital until my blood pressure came down. So as you can imagine, trying to get a low blood pressure reading when you're almost certain that you're about to experience another mental health crisis was thankfully I had a fantastic nurse on the ward who was so sensible about how she did the blood pressure readings, and had it not been for her, I probably would have had another night in the hospital, and that would have been even worse. So not an easy discharge.
Going forward then, what support did you receive for your mental health?
So I immediately contacted my care coordinator from the community perinatal team. She was my liaison with the consultant to alter medication. So we quickly moved things back onto my previous doses. And then I had lots of different support teams checking in on me. So I had the community midwives who stayed with me up to 28 days, which is much longer than the normal home support that you get through them. And actually, they had as part of their team a breastfeeding specialist. So my breastfeeding second time round actually went brilliantly. My brain had decided that was something I didn't need to worry about, so it just focused on something else. But at least knowing that support was there was really comforting.
That's really good.
So I saw my care coordinator probably every few days, and I also saw my health visitor, and I'm also extremely grateful that I was allowed to have the same health visitor as last time. She knew all my history, and that was very, very helpful as well. So I felt kind of wrapped in cotton wool in terms of support. Unfortunately, in terms of what my brain was doing, it actually felt probably more extreme than last time. So more obsessive, intrusive thoughts. But slowly and surely, they started to subside. So it took significant effort my end to keep trying to recognise them as just a thought, let them pass, and not a reflection of me. So I had incredible support again from my parents and parents-in-law. So they essentially moved into the house and helped me get my sleep overnight. And that was probably what avoided me having an admission this time, was that with not being COVID, we could create that environment for me at home. And it would help me get that sleep, which did improve quickly. And then probably by about 6 weeks or so, I was actually feeling much, much better. I could focus on normal things. And
that's good, because that was the point, wasn't it, that you were worried about, was the 6 weeks.
And that was such a hurdle. That because I was worried that I had a predisposition to have my biggest trough, if you like, at that 6 weeks. So actually, when I was on a bit of an upward trend there, and that continued to week 7, suddenly I thought, actually, I'm coming out of this now. And now suddenly she's 6 months old. And I'm in no rush to come off my medication, but I feel I'm so relieved just to be back to myself, enjoying a typical maternity leave now, going to classes, and looking after my beautiful daughters, which there really isn't a answer as to how on earth you look after 2 children. But I'm certainly finding so much joy in that experience now, and they're both great. So
good. And it seems like you've just shown some real determination throughout as well to just get better. which is fantastic.
Yeah, determination and impatience, I'd say.
Yeah, okay.
It's hard to not see it as a problem you want to solve. And I think that's one thing that was such a shock to me, is just, unfortunately, with mental health, so much of it is time, and allowing your medication to kick in. Like, that was almost more brutal second time, because I knew, oh, okay, we're going to change a dose. Well, it might be 2 weeks or more before that has any impact. And actually, I don't know how I'm going to get through tonight and tomorrow. So it's just it's a really horrible illness, frankly. But it is, something that I've learned a lot through. And just that support around, and maybe sometimes you need just distraction. Sometimes distraction doesn't work, but something to take your mind off it, anything, can be really helpful.
So I'd like to finish on 2 questions. First question is there anything in particular you'd like healthcare professionals to know?
So I think, looking back, there's such a focus on the birth during pregnancy, and fair enough, it's a pretty big hurdle. But I remember being advised when I left the hospital first time round about things like safe sleeping, and I totally appreciate you don't want to freak people out, but I do wish there had been some more specific information included at that point about postnatal depression, and maybe some simple signposts as to the different services, who to contact. Just even knowing about the existence of the community perinatal team or the mother and baby unit. I'd never had that history of mental illness, so it took a push from a few people for me to go to the GP in the first instance. I think just trying to do anything to reduce that hopelessness first time round, that to know that you're not on your own, other people experience this, and here are some routes through. But then the other thing I'd also say was, second time round, as I've described it, it was all those teams, and that cotton wool was great. But what that did mean, especially when I saw different people coming from each team, it did mean that I told my story a lot. And there were probably days when that made me worse, going through it quite a lot of detail every day. Or, for example, for some appointments, you got an automated email asking you to fill in one of the Edinburgh assessments. I'm actually doing that on my own without any context and sending it back, and it wasn't even necessarily using the appointment. That was a really sort of difficult experience that I probably didn't do. So just, I think my request, if you like, would just be to be so mindful of who's visiting, what assessments are being done, and if they're going to result in action or going to be used, fair enough. But if not, just try and avoid getting people thinking in those kind of circles.
Yeah, and I guess giving people support as well when filling out these sort of questionnaires, not just sort of pinging them off in an email and not actually thinking about the emotional impact of these questions that are being asked, and having to give some quite black and white answers to those questions as well. Absolutely. Which can feel quite difficult.
And the first one of those that I did with my second daughter was an automated one on my own, and that brought back a lot of memories of doing them first time around.
And is there anything you'd like other women or families who may be going through similar to know?
So I truly believed that I was going to die, and that I would never ever get better. I just want people to know that help is there. So ask and keep asking. Try to be as blunt as possible about what you're thinking. You won't be judged, and it won't be anything that they haven't heard before. It just feels horrible and unnatural and not like you to be saying these things out loud. So yeah, shout for help. And motherhood is absolutely not like you see on Instagram. And there's no shame or guilt in needing medication or support, in breastfeeding or using formula, in having someone else look after your child for a while. You know, your children are better off if you're well, and talk about how you feel. So you're amazed when you share things like this, how many people, either themselves or indirectly, have gone through something similar, maybe not necessarily even pregnancy related. It blew my mind how many of my friends had similar struggles, and I had no idea, close friends. And then to my friends and family, I mean, just a huge thank you. Particularly that second time round, I just can't thank everybody enough, because I'm certain that that's what prevented being admitted a second time. Just having people drop me messages, take me to lunch, pop round for coffee, like reassure me that I'm still a normal human. Check in, babysit my daughter for a while, or just sit with me as a distraction, sit with me in silence, just anything. My husband was absolutely incredible, and if I've been always a glass half empty person, he is the glass more than full. He remained relentlessly positive throughout, and that's what I needed.
Yeah.
So if any of that support is available to you around, just take it. So yeah, and just if you're in those difficult places, try to keep any hope that you can. Don't feel guilty for any joy. You've got to try and allow some of that joy wherever you possibly can find it, even if it's for a second. Because yeah, going back to the consultant, she told me that I'd get better, and I'd have to say that yeah, I do finally believe her.
Charlotte mentioned the Edinburgh Postnatal Depression Scale, so I thought I'd offer some information about what it is and how it should be used. I also looked into its use across cultures. The Edinburgh Postnatal Depression Scale is a scale used to screen for the presence of possible postnatal depression. In the UK, it's most commonly used in primary care. It consists of a set of 10 questions which are rated on a 4-point scale. The woman selects the answer which most closely reflects how she's been feeling over the past week. The answers are scored, with higher scores indicating that postnatal depression is more likely to be present. The scale doesn't give a diagnosis and should be used as part of a full assessment, which would also include taking a history and assessing risk. The scale should be used when a healthcare professional is present. The Edinburgh Postnatal Depression Scale has been translated into many different languages and is used in many different countries. However, there are concerns about its cross-cultural utility. Around the world, it is recognised that some women experience a state of deep and disabling unhappiness following childbirth, but not all cultures would regard this as a mental health problem to be treated. In some cultures, emotional problems are experienced as physical symptoms, and the Edinburgh Postnatal Depression Scale doesn't account for this. The use of questionnaires in general is a Western approach, where data collection is an everyday occurrence. Giving a questionnaire to a person unfamiliar with the use of questionnaires may cause anxiety and affect the reliability of the results. In some cultures, a family member may fill out the questionnaire on behalf of the woman in order to be supportive, which may be culturally appropriate but is not how the Edinburgh Postnatal Depression Scale was designed to be used, and may invalidate the results. In some communities, labels of poor mental health can damage a family's status, so results should be shared with care and, of course, confidentiality. Overall, when using a questionnaire or other assessment tool, it's important that it's acceptable to the person and used with sensitivity, so perhaps think twice before attaching it to an email. For further information, you can visit mind.org and see their page about perinatal and postnatal mental health. I will also post some links in the episode notes. At Lancashire and South Cumbria NHS Foundation Trust, the Perinatal Mental Health Service provides preconception advice for women with a current diagnosis or historical diagnosis of severe mental illness. Similar services are available in other areas of the country, so if it's something that you think would be helpful to you, it's worth discussing with your GP.